Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Capital One. It's now time for the start of the week for week number 1. I've waited a long time to say that, and here we go. Trey Lance making his first start as the official starter of the 49ers. At least that's the hope for the remainder of the season. We know he's going to be the starter in week 1 against Chicago, and it's a great matchup against a Bears defense that's transitioning to a 4-3 scheme. Down some key players, certainly down their best pass rusher, no more Khalil Mack, and Trey Lance should take advantage of it. Now, he may not have George Kittle, but you know what? I don't even care. I think he's going to do fantastic things with his legs. We saw last year in 3 main appearances, averaged over 53 yards per game on the ground. The Bears last year were among the top teams in rushing touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks. Dave, did you know that? They gave up 5 touchdowns on the ground to quarterbacks. You know who scored 2 of those?
Who?
Jimmy Garoppolo scored 2 rushing touchdowns against the Chicago Bears defense. I think Trey Lance probably a little bit better runner, a little bit better athlete than Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's certainly going to prove to be a good passer as well, taking advantage of Brandon Nyheim, taking advantage of Deebo Samuel, hopefully taking advantage of George Kittle. I love the setup for him in his first start to go out and have a big game. Do you share that sentiment?
I think he has a good start. I don't think he's going to have a monster game. I don't know how much he's going to need to do. I love Elijah Mitchell this week. I think he runs through the Bears defense quite a bit. But I do think Trey Lance could find 1 touchdown on the ground. I mean, if Garoppolo could have 2, then Trey should get 1, right? And then I think he throws for another one. Look for Deebo Samuel to catch it. 200 yards passing on top of it, maybe 40 yards rushing. Solid day. You'll be happy you started him.
Heath, how do you feel about Trey Lance in his 2022 debut?
I'm pretty excited to see it. I want to see him passing the ball. I want to see how much Kyle Shanahan designs runs for him. This game, both Lance and Fields, I'd like to just sit down and watch it only, give it my full attention during the early games on Sunday, because it will be fascinating just to see how these quarterbacks perform, to see if Jimmy Garoppolo impacts Lance's confidence at all with Garoppolo over there on the sideline. I like Lance as a borderline start this week.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope Justin Fields plays well also. Obviously, not a lot to feel good about his situation right now. But Lance certainly in a good spot and hopefully keeps Jimmy Garoppolo on the bench for the majority of the season. All right, here's the rest of my starts along with Trey Lance. We're going to go through starts for each of us as we give you a taste of some of the players that we're excited about here. So Derek Carr, A.J. Dillon, Nyheim Hines, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk, guys that I'm excited about for this week. And the one that probably stands out the most would be Nyheim Hines, because you drafted, at least for the most part, Derek Carr might be a borderline starter for the majority of you, but you drafted these guys at least to be number 3 receivers, and Juju Smith-Schuster and Christian Kirk and A.J. Dillon as a starter. But I think Nyheim Hines is in a good spot. And I know this doesn't feel like the type of game where you would want to expect him to play well or lean on him, because probably the Colts will win this game easily, knowing how they beat the Texans last year. But I think what we're going to see is Nyheim Hines involved, even in game scripts that doesn't necessarily send the message of we have to throw from behind or get him on the field. Jonathan Taylor will get his numbers. But you heard all offseason about how they want to involve Nyheim Hines more in the passing game, more involved in the game plan overall. I think he'll have 4 to 5 catches. I think he'll make some plays in space, maybe find an end zone. Not a great start in non-PPR, but in PPR, half PPR, I think he'd be a flex for you. So I'm excited about Nyheim Hines. I know I'm probably on the outlier of that, but I do think that he's in a good spot. For example, I would start him in PPR over Breece Hall. I would start him over Damien Harris. I would start him over some guys that were drafted well ahead of him going into this week.
Do you think he can get you 11 PPR points?
Easily.
He's done that 3 of his 4 week 1 games over the course of his career.
The bone game against Jacksonville 2 years ago, right?
I think so. One of them he went bananas.
The Gardner Minshew game, yeah. Marlon Mack tore his ACL.
If the Texans give the Colts a game, and I think they might, then this is going to look good, and Nyheim Hines will be okay.
All right, so we'll see how Nyheim Hines does. Again, better. This is mostly a PPR start or recommendation, but more of a flex play than anything else. All right, Dave, let's take a look at your starts here and the guys that you're excited about for this week. And listen, we're going to have some conversations about, some players that we like, some players that we don't like. We'll tie it in mostly with our sits. But here are the players that Dave is targeting for this upcoming Week 1 campaign. Kirk Cousins, Miles Sanders, Rashad Penny at running back, Elijah Moore and David Njoku at the tight end position. Njoku is somebody that you've been talking a lot about this offseason with his role with Jacoby Brissett. But Elijah Moore, we really didn't spend a lot of time talking about, because we kind of thought, okay, he's a decent number 3 receiver, but can he take advantage, or at least can the Jets take advantage of using his skill set? Now we have a new quarterback, knowing that there is no Zach Wilson for at least the first 3 games, potentially longer than that, as he's out with that knee injury. Joe Flacco going to start in the revenge game against Baltimore. This obviously makes you like Elijah Moore, right?
It actually makes me like him more than if Zach Wilson was there. And I know that sounds backwards, but I am nervous about Zach Wilson. I love what Elijah Moore has done with Joe Flacco on the field. Last year, it was basically a game and a quarter that they played together. 31% of Flacco's targets went to Elijah Moore. 2 touchdowns went to Elijah Moore. The full game they played together, 11 targets, 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. I think you would take that as a flex this week. Top 26 wide receiver for me. Not a number 2, maybe a low-end guy, but I love him as a flex, PPR or non-PPR. I think he's the number 1 target in the Jets offense for now.
Yeah, I think we have to put a little caveat on when we talk about rankings. It's not top 24 as a starter. There's too many good wide receivers. You have a lot of options. You know, it's almost like top 36 is still a starter for you, especially when you talk about 3 receiver leagues. Heath, let's take a look at your starts here and the guys that you're excited about for this week. And one in particular stands out, and that's a wide receiver from Detroit in Mon-Fri St. Brown. But here's the list of guys that Heath is excited about as starting options. We're going to have a little conversation about Joe Burrow and Rashad Penny in a minute. But tell me about Mon-Fri St. Brown, because, again, another receiver similar to Elijah Moore that we knew last year he played really well, but we don't have the expectations for him to build off of that. But you like him this week against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, if he built off that, he might just be the best wide receiver in fantasy. The main argument against St. Brown has always been, well, he can't be as good as he was those last 6 games. DeAndre Swift wasn't there. TJ Hawkinson wasn't there. But I don't think people remember how good he was. He was the number 3 wide receiver in fantasy. Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams were the only wide receivers who scored more than him. If you took away a third of his points from that stretch, he still would have been a starting top 20 wide receiver. Jameson Williams may affect St. Brown in the second half of the season, but for the first half of this year, I expect him to be a top 25 wide receiver at worst. In this game, they'll be chasing the score. Should be plenty of targets available for him. Would not be surprised at all if he finishes top 15.
We have 3 receivers, I think, that kind of fall in a similar category. One for me was Juju, one for you is Elijah Moore, one for Heath is St. Brown. Of those 3 guys, who do you like the best, Dave?
I think I'm going to land on Juju because I think the matchup is going to dictate that he gets a lot of targets and catches, and that volume is going to be huge for him. He's not going to get that every week, but I think he does against Arizona, and their pass rush is going to be a big step back from where it was last year, and their secondary, too, going to be a problem.
Heath, same question. Which of that trio do you like the best?
It's St. Brown. I've got him, I think, 8 spots higher than the other 2.
All right, so look, it could be good for him. No Jameson Williams again. You know, we'll see how the game flow goes if Philadelphia's playing with the lead. We saw last year in week 1, Jared Goff had a lot of good dump-off passes, which was great for DeAndre Swift and for Jamal Williams. Mon-Fri St. Brown going to play a similar type of role near the line of scrimmage, so he could have a lot of receptions. Just a matter of what he does with them. But should be fun to see all 3 of these receivers hopefully play at a very good level.